I have been handed the torch and I have got to thrive because I have generations underneath me that are watching, and I have really got to show them that you have to have a no failure concept.
When it's your passion, you have to anticipate that people will not be on board to the degree you would expect them to be on board.
Let your ego go, let it go, and just learn. It's a lifelong decision. It's not, I'm going to act, direct, and write. This is a lifelong decision. And you got to learn every single day.
You'd have to know if a person is serious about being successful or if it's a front and they're afraid of success.
It's worth it. Like, the work and the sacrifice is worth it, that I get to say exactly what I want to say all the time. And that is so important to me.
Yeah.
Be able to express myself.
I'm a writer, creator, producer, director, author, and community champion. But that's not how the story started. I faced rejections more times than I could count and found support in the most surprising places. Scrap paper is where I make sense of it all. The scraps, the stories, and the strength behind the journey.
Fill the audience in on your creative process, how you got even inspired to start doing creative work.
So I grew up at a time and a place where there wasn't a lot of art around. I didn't know because I didn't see it. I wasn't exposed to it as a kid, but I was definitely exposed to a lot of music. And that was, again, back in a time when at least all of your friends in high school were probably listening to the same stuff. Whereas now everything is available to everybody, so it's not quite the same cultural touchstone that a lot of us who are older grew up with. But I was really, primarily drawn into music, but I've done other kinds of creative work as well. That's really where it all started. It was just me listening to the radio, talking to friends, and trying to figure out, like, could I do this?
Yeah, and what was the first moment when you decided, yes, I can, and you started doing?
So I was reading an interview with a guy named, his name is Robert Fripp. So he's a very famous English guitar player. He founded a band that's called King Crimson. It's one of the most well-respected progressive rock bands in the world. And he is arguably one of the most technically proficient guitar players ever. So, he's at that level of, he's among the gods, not for us, mere mortals to be able to interact with or even learn from. And so I read an interview with him, and he said that when he started, that he was tone deaf and that he had no sense of rhythm. So I thought, okay, well, if he could be at this level and start pretty much where I am, which, hey, I'm also tone deaf and have no sense of rhythm. But it's like, okay, so maybe there's a chance that I could learn how to do it. And because I had a parallel life as a martial arts instructor, where again, I had no natural ability at all. And it was just a matter of hard work and really good instruction and feedback and just practice, that I learned that anything that seems out of reach, you could probably at least make progress towards if you're willing to listen and you're willing to put in the time and practice and give it your best shot.
And now a brief word from our sponsors.
Every great story needs a director, a guide, someone who helps you define your role and step into it with confidence. That's exactly what Epiphany Resources does. Whether you're a leader, an entrepreneur, or someone searching for direction, Epiphany Resources helps you find your why and equips you to pursue it. They don't just focus on the details, they focus on you. Learn more at epiphanyresourcesllc.com. Looking for a hit of nostalgia? Starling Avenue Cards and Comics has you covered. From vintage sports cards to legendary comics, it's a treasure trove for collectors and curious minds alike. Proud to sponsor Scrap Paper, where creative stories come to life, because every great collection and every great creator starts with a spark. Stop by Starling Avenue and find yours.
And now back to Scrap Paper with Natalie K. Hodge.
What are some other lessons, aside from being a good listener, that you've learned throughout your journey?
Other than being a good what?
listener.
Oh, I'm sorry. I couldn't help it. I'm so sorry.
You got me caught up in your foolishness.
Well, I think part of it is having an example of possibility, right? So most people who get into any kind of artwork or any kind of creative types of work, I would assume most of the time they did it because they saw somebody else doing it. And they're like, hey, I want to see if I can do that. It's the same kind of dynamic. So I think from the work that I do, which is really about helping teams to really create a roadmap from wherever they are to where they want to go, and specifically solving meaningful, complex problems. And what that means is that a complex problem is when there is no obvious proven solution. So, and I'm sure you deal with this all the time too in your work, Natalie, which is people will say, hey, I would love this product if you could make it for me. And I want it to be just like this other one that you've done, but make it completely customized for me. It's like, well, that's not, if I customize it, it's not going to be the thing that inspired you. But you do have to have something, to be able to put in front of people to get them to react to, so that they can then say, okay, I like this, I don't like that. Can you change this? What about adding that? So I think the nice thing about the work that we do is that we're not lone artists in a basement. We're doing collaborative creativity work where we have to be able to show people, here's an example of what's possible. I can't give you exactly that, but we can kind of move at least in that direction. And maybe we'll come up with something even better than what originally inspired you. But having that inspiration is, I think, a really important place to start.
Yeah, for sure. Think back to something maybe in your creative journey that didn't work, but then led to something that did.
Wow, that's a really great question. I would say, at no point in my life have I ever felt that I was on a creative journey. It feels a lot more like maybe a creative, like fumbling and stumbling, but not a journey. Like I would love a journey, with a clear path to a predefined goal. That's, obviously a meaningful goal that has consequences that will hopefully reverberate, forever into the future. So most of the work that I've done has been on complex problems, as I was mentioning earlier. And what that means is that no matter what you think is going to work, it's probably not, because you probably don't even understand the problem yet until you start digging in. Like there are ways to help people figure this out and become more clear about what they're doing, whether or not, again, it's a problem we're solving, who's the right people that need to be there to pull this off. And along the way, I would say that if you're working, it's working out. So it's working out as long as you keep going. Are you familiar with the concept of finite and infinite games? Have you ever heard of that?
No, I don't think so.
So it's a concept that this New York University professor, John Carr's put together. He just died a couple years ago. But the basic idea was that there's really two different kinds of games that we all play. So there are finite games, which are kind of what we usually think about when we say the term game, meaning that there's, clearly defined players, there are very specific and clearly defined immutable rules, and then there's some specific destination or some specific way of keeping score and then knowing when the game is over and who won. So those are finite games, and we all have those to play. And then there's infinite games, which are kind of the opposite. So there's not necessarily clearly defined players. There may be some people who seem to be playing, but you're never totally sure. And the rules can change. As a matter of fact, everybody could potentially be playing by different rules, but still participating. But ultimately, what really makes it different is that the outcome for an infinite game is that you just keep playing, that you keep the game going. It's not about winning and losing and dominating. You can kind of do that along the way, but the real game is just keep playing. So, same thing, which is I try to do the same in my own work, which is that I recognize, hey, if I'm still playing, there's still a chance to continue to move forward and do something hopefully really great. At some point where if I'm not allowed to play anymore, then I'm gonna have to go find another game, right? I'm gonna have to do that. But like I've had plenty of examples of where I thought what I was doing was great, especially early in my career. Like for example, I did some work for Time Warner Cable where I essentially helped them cut their training time by about 70%, their post-training support cut by 85%, their attrition with people who are either in training or recently graduating into production, we cut to 0, which was unprecedented. And then people achieved their glide path targets essentially in 120% faster than ever before. So this sounded like a miracle, right? I mean, it's like, oh, wow, these are like really big numbers. And we got a lot of attention from other groups around the company who would fly in and kind of watch what we were doing and saying, how are you doing this? Well, then when the corporate team joined, they did it because they thought we were cheating. They're like, there's no way you're able to really get those results. We've never seen anything like that. That is just so shocking that we have to assume that maybe there's some funny business going on. So they did come and watch what we were doing. And they did say, you know what? We will admit we were a bit skeptical. We're believers. And at the same time, we can't really scale the solution to the rest of the organization. And my question was, well, why not? And the CLO's answer was, well, because it's too talent dependent. I'm like, well, what does that mean? And she said, well, that means it depends on somebody like you, Sean. Like only you can pull stuff like this off. So of course, on one level, my ego is like exploding. Like I'm a brilliant, snowflake genius. But on the other side to say, well, but this is a failure because my goal was to be able to create something that I could then share, with other people within this company and maybe even outside the company. But now what I found is that I need to rethink how I do this going forward. I need to better engage the right stakeholders from the beginning. I need to make sure that, we're aligned in terms of what we're trying to do. I need to be able to set it up so that whatever results we're getting don't require so much additional scrutiny because we've already essentially negotiated how we're going to measure this, and we all have access to what we believe are good sources of truth, for the data that we're using to describe our results. So I've learned that lesson over and over again, which is I need to make it less about me, more about the clients, and try to maybe fade into the background. So instead of being the hero of the story, I really should be more like the guide that helps other people in their journeys as opposed to just my own.
In thinking about your journey as a guide, how would you guide your younger self?
Wow. I would say I wouldn't give advice to my younger son or my younger self. I was going to say, or I try to do it with my children too. And I'm assuming I would get the same reaction from my younger son or my younger self that I do from my actual sons, my children, which is they're not going to listen to advice. What I would do though is ask questions. And the big question that I ask that is often the most powerful, and it seems so simple, which is, what do you really, really want? Because my guess is most people, and I've done a lot of work in this area. I used to work in the seminar business, and I would ask this question all the time. And the answers that I would get would usually be, I don't know. I don't know what I want. Or it'd be a list of, here's all the stuff I don't want. It's like, okay, well, we can at least start with that and maybe look at the opposite of what you don't want to help you. But really clarifying what you want is incredibly powerful and incredibly rare. So I would ask my younger self, what do you really, really want? And let's work through it together.
As you've progressed in your personal path, your career path, what are some of the side hustles, side projects? What are some things you've gotten your hands into along the way?
Yeah, so my life is just totally ridiculous, Natalie. the amount of stuff that I do, the diversity of projects I've worked on and different types of people, it sounds crazy. And I wouldn't get too worried if somebody was like, I don't believe you, Sean, like there's no way you've done all that stuff. But what I would say is that I think side hustles are a good place to take maybe something you have as a hobby and see if you can test it out and maybe turn it into something that can do more. It doesn't always have to result in money, but it should result in learning. It should result maybe hopefully refining some skills, developing some new connections, maybe even providing some proof that you can do that type of thing. So it's a really great place to take interests that you have and see if you can go further. So for example, here in Martinsville, I'm with a new group called the Open, and what we do is we're an improvisational ambient band. So we play electronic music with no vocals. There's no real songs per se. It's just 2 hours of jamming live in front of an audience, and it's a very risky idea. And my two other bandmates are literally half of my age, so that's very interesting. But we've actually been getting some good traction. We've played about 6 different places so far within Martinsville. We've got a really big gig coming up in Durham in April. And, we're not necessarily making money right now, but as a side hustle or side project perspective, it's a lot of fun and we meet a lot of people and it creates a lot of new conversation.
I have been an audience member.
Yes, thank you. We appreciate your support.
Yes, and really enjoyed the energy of it. It was a different experience. When we walked into the space, I thought you all were on a break because I was just imagining you would be like more engaged in some way in the I don't know. I didn't have a correct expectation of what the experience was going to be. And so I'm like, it's like you're in the middle of doing your thing. And it was such good energy. It was fun. It was peaceful. So I'm really excited about what you all are doing and keep on doing it.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate it. It's super fun. We're learning a lot. We're definitely getting better. At one of our last gigs, we did have somebody come up to us and say, can you play something more upbeat like the Commodores? I'm like, we're not going to play the Commodores. Like, are you crazy? But it's okay because we knew when we started doing this, what we're going to do is very different. To your point, we're not focused on being like the stars on stage. We're really trying to create music or a vibe that while people are having a conversation will hopefully elevate the conversation a bit. So that's a very different approach to being a musical group. But again, so far we're getting some success, and it's very exciting to see where we can go next.
Yeah, it's a nice parallel between what you shared about what you learned from the Time Warner experience in not necessarily being the hero of the moment, but just being a background player in it. So similar kind of thing to what you're doing musically.
And now a brief word from our sponsors.
Behind every rural nonprofit or community-driven business is a powerful story, one that deserves to be heard. Letterpress Communications makes sure it is. Letterpress crafts messaging that inspires action using community-powered marketing strategies that helps changemakers like you create an even bigger impact. If you're building something that strengthens your community, Letterpress is here to help amplify your voice. Visit letterpresscommunications.com or connect on Facebook or LinkedIn to get started, because the work you do should never go unnoticed. Scrap Paper is all about exploring ideas and pushing boundaries, and so is our sponsor, Epiphany Resources. Success isn't just about knowing what to do, it's about having the clarity and resilience to do it. Epiphany Resources helps leaders and business owners break through the obstacles and grow into their full potential through coaching, mentoring, and speaking. If you're ready to take the next step, visit epiphanyresourcesllc.com.
And now back to Scrap Paper with Natalie K. Hodge.
Who or what keeps it all together for you? Your projects, your ideas, your creative work?
Yeah. So this is not going to be any surprise to you, which is by far, it's my wife. So my wife brings everything together. So we've been together for more than 30 years, and I have no idea how that happened. Like when we're talking about like creative journeys, like I've regularly in my life been thinking, how did I get here? Like, how did I get in this situation with these amazing people? Like, then this podcast is a good example. Like, how in the world would Natalie want to talk to me about my creative work? I'm honored to do it, and I am happy that I've been asked, but it always feels a little bit like, am I really deserving of this? And with my wife, I already know the answer is no, I am not deserving of this. So I need to work hard to try to be deserving, because she is amazing. But in addition to her, obviously my other family members, my children, my sister Kelly, they're all very big supporters. I have a lot of friends that I stay in contact with on a regular basis. And then from a support here in Martinsville, I would start with you, and I'd start with Hassan. Two are the most amazing ambassadors, for this community that it's probably ever had in its entire history. And then there's, of course, Lee and Linda Prilliman, and there's, Josh and Morgan Blancas, and there's Wayne Draper and Dean Johnston, and, Jay Judkins, who's amazing. You should have him on the podcast for sure. Like, that guy is absolutely brilliant. Jennifer Rice, and my bandmates, CJ and Aaron from the Open. Like, I have so many amazing people that I'm surrounded with on a regular basis, and I am so grateful to have them in my life.
Yeah, here's a fun fact. Jay Judkins and his Epiphany Resources Group, they are a sponsor.
Oh.
So he is here for
Great.
every episode. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, a great group of people. I'm honored to be on that list, and there's so much love and appreciation for you and what you do and how you support. And we've had this conversation, but I just want to share it out loud. So last year, you passed on the Rick Rubin book to the Creative Act, and so he was enjoying the book. And Hassan reads, but he doesn't read like I read. Like, I'm into books. And he does a thing where he'll just like open the book to a page and then read that part. And then the next day he'll open it to another page and read another part. So that's not my personal process, but that's his jam. And like, everybody gets to do it their way.
Yeah.
So when he finished the book and he really, really enjoyed it, I was chomping at the bit to get my hands on this book. So I read it in the more traditional structure. Not that we have to do that, but I was inspired by Rick Rubin's sharing of how he creates and the space he gives himself to do that work, and fully honoring his authentic process. And that had a huge impact on my year last year, having read that book.
Okay.
And when I started to put Mahogany Blues together, wanting to do it in a way that I hadn't done previous books, that came to mind, that I don't have to be traditional in my structuring of the book. I can have notes and thoughts and random pieces intertwined with the poetry. And it felt so good, and people have appreciated it, but it's not that I cared that they would appreciate it. I felt like it honored who I was and who I am, and my current process of sharing ideas. So thank you for allowing us to have that piece of content that has had such a broad impact on our lives.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I enjoyed it too, and I've gotten a lot from it. I've read it multiple times and shared it with friends as well. And the one thing I will say is I've thought about even preparing for this interview is this again, the idea we started with of, a creative journey and not really feeling like I've been on one. Well, I'm trying to build them now for other people and for myself. As a matter of fact, I've had multiple people recently say, Sean, you really need to do this for yourself. I'm like, yeah, you're totally right. Um, but back to the idea of a journey again, is that we've all heard that term that the journey is more important than the destination. But I think things I've learned in my lifetime has been that might be true, but the people that are with you on that journey are way more important than the journey or the destination will ever be. And if you treat people like stepping stones on your journey, which a lot of people do, like we're not going to do that. We want to be respectful and take care of each other and listen and, take our goals, which today might seem like they're big, but they're probably not big enough. Like if they're not big enough to include other people in bringing in, these things to fruition, the goal might not be that great. So it makes it more risky, it makes it more complex and more challenging. But I do think, what this is all about is like, who are we journeying with, and how are we taking care of each other?
Is there a next big goal for you? Something you have coming up that you're excited to share?
Yeah, so again, I'm working on a lot of music right now. This show we're going to do, could potentially be, 500,000 people. So that'll be our biggest audience by far. I'm actually even doing a workshop right now with Brian Eno, who's one of my heroes. And that's been really helpful to not just participate, but also think, well, again, now that I've seen the example, could I do that? Like, could I do it like the way he's doing it? And I think I can. So it's worth at least a try. But now that I've got, the inspiration, my next goal is to say, how can I, expand this? And really where I want to go next to is really working with organizations to help them transition into what I think is going to be an incredibly challenging, disruptive, and maybe even painful next couple of years. Partly because of what's happening with, the world in general, but particularly artificial intelligence and the threat that it could be taking 50% of people's jobs. Like, I do think somebody, who's there to kind of ask, okay, so what do you want? Like, and how do we help you get it? Now that this world is kind of shifted in this direction, let's create some hope. Let's create some tangible roadmaps with clearly defined goals so that you can know that you're making progress and that you can share with other people what you're trying to do so they can help you. So I think, any kind of inspiration I can take from anybody who's being able to communicate successfully and drive new behavior and help people prepare for the future is something that takes a lot of my interest. I have a lot of passion for that.
Well, I'm excited for our next coffee catch up where you let me know how you're working toward that. It's been an honor and a privilege to sit with you for a few minutes to talk about your creative journey, which you are on the journey. Even as just reflecting back to you sharing how it's been random, chaotic movement. No one said that the journey was going to be linear. So sometimes it can be just crazy making, but that's a part of the process. And thank you for sharing a part of your process and your journey with us on Scrap Paper.
Thank you.